All right, let's dive into what I think is one of the most important books of the 20th century, Erich Fromm's To Have or To Be. Now, Fromm was a social psychologist, a philosopher, and he really challenged the basic assumptions of modern life. And this book, this gets right to the very heart of it all.
And just so you know, this isn't some dry academic breakdown. This explainer is packed with the most powerful ideas from Fromm's work. I'm talking concepts that are so sharp, they get right to the core of a huge human dilemma. I have a feeling they might just make you re-examine a few things in your own life. So let's just start with a main question Fromm puts on the table. And really, it's a question for all of us. Are you defined by what you possess, by the things you have, or are you defined by the person you fundamentally are? It sounds simple, right? But as you're about to see, our entire society is pretty much built around just one of those answers. And Fromm just put his finger on the problem so perfectly with this. In our culture, these two ideas, having and being, have basically melted into one. The goal is to have more, to accumulate. We even describe people by their net worth. And Fromm argues we've reached this really dangerous conclusion. If you don't have anything, you are nothing. So, to unpack all this, Fromm gives us these two basic ways of living. On one side, you've got the having mode. This is a life that's all about possession, about ownership. The motto here is pretty clear: I am what I have. But then on the other side, you have the being mode. This is about aliveness, experience, and connection. And its motto is much simpler: I am what I am. So let's take a closer look at this having mode, because let's be honest, it's the one our world is constantly pushing us toward. This is what a life built on a foundation of possessions really looks like. And this quote just nails the core problem. When we're living in be having mode, our identity gets completely tangled up with our property. Our sense of who we are isn't internal, it's external. It depends on the stuff we own. So if our possessions are threatened, our very sense of self feels like it's under attack. And this is where Fromm's idea starts to hit really close to home, because this having mindset just creeps into everything. I mean, think about learning. Are we trying to truly understand something, or are we just trying to possess enough facts to ace an exam? Or what about conversations? Are we exploring ideas with someone, or just defending our opinion like it's a piece of property? It can even poison our relationships. Do we want to connect with someone, or do we want to have them? But Fromm insists there is another way. So let's shift gears and look at the reality of being. Let's see how this builds a totally different kind of life, one based not on what you own, but on who you are. Now, this is a super important point. Being is not passive. It's not about just sitting there doing nothing. Fromm defines it as a state of inner activity. It's about productively using our potential, our ability to grow, to share, to love, and ultimately to break free from the lonely prison of our own ego. But this leads to a huge paradox. To truly and fully be, Fromm says, we actually have to let things go. He's echoing a lot of mystics and philosophers here when he says it requires giving up that constant focus on ourselves, that selfishness. It means becoming empty of the need to possess and poor in the things that weigh our ego down. Okay, so we have these two completely opposite ways of living. What are the real consequences of choosing one over the other? I mean, how does this choice actually end up shaping, well, everything about our lives? Well, let's start with security. In the having mode, your feeling of security is incredibly fragile. It's all based on things you can lose: your money, your job, your stuff. If those things disappear, your identity just crumbles. But in the being mode, security comes from the inside. Your identity is your character, your love, your strength, and nobody can ever take that away from you. This choice also completely changes our relationships. The having mode can't help but create conflict. If life is all about acquiring things, then other people become your competitors. Greed and fear become the default settings. But the being mode does the exact opposite. It builds solidarity. The focus shifts from taking to sharing, and that leads to real connection and real joy. And finally, this choice shapes how we face the biggest human reality of all: mortality. Fromm says that in the having mode, death is the ultimate terror. And why is that? Because it's the total loss of everything you've built your identity on: your property, your status, your ego. It's like the final bankruptcy. But in the being mode, since your identity isn't tied to things that can be taken, you just affirm life in every moment. The focus is on living, and the fear of losing it all starts to fade away. Hearing all this, it sounds pretty radical, doesn't it? It kind of forces us to ask a tough question. In a world so completely obsessed with having, is a different way of life, a different kind of society, even possible?
Fromm believed it was. He actually sketched out this vision for what he called a new kind of human being. Just imagine a person whose main goal isn't to accumulate, but to grow. Someone who finds security not in their bank account, but in who they are. They'd feel this deep connection with all of life. And for them, freedom wouldn't mean the freedom to buy more. It would mean the freedom to just be themselves. To really sum up this whole dilemma, Fromm often pointed to the ideas of a young Karl Marx, who was also really worried about how modern life separates us from our true selves. This quote Fromm uses just captures the trade-off perfectly. It's almost like a zero-sum game. The more energy you pour into having, the less you have left over for being, and you end up with a life that's rich in things but totally poor in spirit.
So, after exploring all of Fromm's incredible ideas, we're left with one final question for you to think about. As you look at your own life, your job, your relationships, your goals, which one of these modes of existence feels most familiar? The path of having or the path of being?